Well, hello everyone. Now that you know that slot 1 is already over for CAT 22, I'm here to give you an update, to give you a review as to how the paper was, what are you supposed to do, what should be the strategy for the slot 2 and slot 3 people, and the most important thing is don't panic because the paper wasn't very difficult. Okay? To begin with, let's start with VA and RC. So VA and RC mein, there was a small change. There were 4 RCs which had come and each of the 4 RCs had come for 4 questions. मतलब total थे 16 questions. ठीक है? The total VARC accounted for 24 questions, out of which 16 questions were RC and the 8 questions were pure verbal ability. तो RCs, जो 4 RCs थे, हर एक पे 4 questions थे. I would suggest that out of the 4, 2 were pretty manageable, like they were easy to moderate to understand, they were not very complex, but the other 2 were on a higher difficulty level. So, solving 2 RCs and leaving 2 RCs could be a good option for most of you. And as far as the VA was concerned, verbal ability mein, most of the questions were based on the essence of the paragraph. So, they had given you one long paragraph, and they had given you 5 options and they had asked you what is the current essence of the passage, what is the correct essence of the passage according to you. So if you read the passage thoroughly, I don't think it would have been very difficult for you to crack the essence of the passage. Plus there was a new category of questions which I felt in VARC, which was they had given you a statement. Okay? It was an example, it was a form of closed passage only. However, it was slightly different because एक statement दिया था, ठीक है? They had given you a statement and they had given you a passage. The passage had 4 blanks and they had asked you कि this statement will fit in which of the following blanks. ठीक है? तो 4 blanks दिया था and the statement had to fit in only one of the blanks. There were 4 blanks and you had to identify where it would correctly match and complete the passage. ठीक है? There were 2 questions based on this. There were 2 to 3 questions based on the essence of the passage and there were 2 questions on parajumbles. Okay? So, parajumbles, obviously there were 4 statements and you had to figure out the correct order, which was kind of time consuming, but then essence or close passage mein, I think scoring was kind of easier. बहुत ज़्यादा difficult नहीं था VARC. I personally felt that it was on a easy to moderate level. ठीक है, if you read the passage thoroughly, because there was one very easy passage, one was moderate and 2 were difficult. तो if you could identify कि कौन सा passage readable है, कौन सा जल्दी solve हो सकता है, then it was manageable. And the questions asked were also not very complicated. Once you understand the idea of the passage, answering at least 2 out on 4 or 3 on 4 questions was manageable. So that was all about VA and RC. Having said that, moving on to the next section, DI and LR. DI and LR I felt was on a moderate to difficult level. DI-LR was not very easy. Matlab, there was a small change which happened this year, which was instead of asking 5 or 6 sets, there were only 4 sets. ठीक है? Every set comprised of only 5 questions. ठीक है? तो 6 questions वाला DI-LR नहीं था, 4 questions वाला भी नहीं था, 5 questions वाले 4 set थे. So that accounted for a total of 20 questions. ठीक है? अब ये जो 4 sets थे, picking up the right set was very tricky क्योंकि first of all none of the sets were only DI based set. DI pure DI जिसको traditionally हम बोलते हैं कि bar graph, line graph, pie chart, उस पे कुछ भी नहीं था. ठीक है? So pure DI based sets were not there at all. But all 4 sets could be categorized as quant based LR sets. ठीक है? तो calculation भी करना था. There was a lot of logic involved. So they were more of quant based sets. More of quant plus LR based sets. ठीक है? अभी इसमें से एक set clearly games and tournaments का set था, wherein they had given you 4 goals and the total number of goals scored were given. कि total number of goals उन्होंने score किए थे 12 goals. ठीक है? इन्होंने 8 matches खेली थी. And every girl had scored at least 1 goal. हर मैच में कम से कम 1 goal score हो रहा था. Total 12 goals were scored and you had to identify who is scoring in which match and so on. So personally I felt that within 10 to 12 minutes that set was manageable. थोड़ा दिमाग लगाना पड़ता, but then it was manageable to some extent. The next set, yes, it was pretty different to look at because they had given you a diagram wherein they had given you stations, junctions, and the mid stations, and you had to calculate. They had given you different routes. तो you had to calculate अगर train let's say point A से point B जा रही है तो उसको कितना time लगेगा. So they had given you कि normal stations पे the train halts for 1 minute. At junction it halts for 2 minutes. And then, moving between the stations, it takes 2 minutes, east to west, and north to south, 3 minutes, and so on. So they had asked you questions wherein you were required to calculate, but it was simple addition subtraction. ठीक है कि point A से point B जा रहा है, इतने stations आ रहे हैं, इतना minute रुकेगी, इतना minute travel करेगी. So yes, it was kind of lengthy, but this was one set which I feel कि इसके out of 5 questions, around 3 to 4 questions were manageable. Okay, some questions were theta questions, some questions were option based. So I feel option based questions, looking at the options, it could give you a good idea कि what could have been the answers because calculation से वो आ जाता था values. ठीक है. The third set was quant based LR only because they had given you like 6 interviewers. And they used to give certain tokens like 2 rupee, 3 rupee, 5 rupee, 7 rupee, 11 rupee and 13 rupee के tokens दिए थे. ठीक है. Every interviewer was supposed to give only one amount का token. ठीक है. And then ये जो भी token दिया जाता है into 1000, that is the money the person who is raising the fund receives. So there were 5 people who were asking for funds. And you had to identify which interviewer was giving funds and how many funds to each of these guys. ठीक है. This was slightly tricky because I felt कि काफी limited information था. तो आपको इसमें करना क्या था कि they had given you the numbers as in the fund received was 3,90,000, 2,10,000, 66,000, 1,65,000. तो वो funds दिए थे. तो you had to prime factorize these numbers कि ये 165 कैसे आएगा, कितने factors को multiply करोगे तो 165 आएगा, 66 कब आएगा, so 2 into 3 into 11 would give you 66, so how many ways are there, so कौन सा judge कितनी बार कौन सा number use कर रहा है, what could be the token number each judge was giving, all those things. So yes, this set was doable, but I feel that this would have taken quite more time compared to the first 2 sets. And there was the last set. The last set was also kind of calculation intensive. They had given you like a college which had some girls, some boys. And some girls are ready for a 1-day event, 2-day event, 3-day events. Then percentages diya tha, some people who are okay with 2 events are also okay for 3 events. And then you had to calculate कि 2 events hai, 3 bhi ho ja raha hai. So this could have been solved by Venn diagrams for sure. But थोड़ा कंडीशंस में अंडरस्टैंड करने में और उसको सॉल्व करने में टाइम लगता. ठीक है. ये नॉर्मली भी सॉल्व हो सकता था बट वेन डायग्राम से एक सॉल्व करते तो बेटर होता. बट आई फेल्ट द फर्स्ट 2 सेट्स वर प्रीटी मच मैनेजेबल कंपेयर टू द अदर 2. ठीक है. सो द DILR सेट वाज मोर ऑन अ मॉडरेट टू डिफिकल्ट लेवल फॉर श्योर. ठीक है. As far as quant was concerned, so there are 20 questions in DILR and there were 22 questions in quant. Abhi, it was pretty much dominated by arithmetic. Yes, there were many questions on arithmetic. Usme bhi sabse zyada questions were on averages, mixtures and allegations. 4 questions were on mixtures and allegations, 1 question on average. So if you were good with mixtures and allegations, I guess 2 to 3 questions out of the mixtures and allegations were solvable. Ratio proportion pe there were 2 questions. Simple compound interest, simple interest pe there was 1 question. And 3 questions on geometry, plus inequalities modulus algebra पे there were 3 to 4 questions. ठीक है. तो अगर आपने arithmetic अच्छे से किया है, ठीक है, if you're good at arithmetic, 8 to 10 questions तो बड़ी आसानी से solvable थे. ठीक है. arithmetic अगर किया है तो 8 to 10 questions I think was a decent attempt, and most of the students who I spoke to, they were able to manage 8 to 10 questions at least in quant. ठीक है. तो arithmetic काफी सारे questions थे. Geometry के there were 3 questions. Inequalities modulus 2 to 3 questions. A bit of algebra which included quadratic equations and so on. So quant, I feel if you are good with arithmetic and geometry, 11 to 12 questions तो हो ही सकता था. ऐसा नहीं था कि वो क्वेश्चन सॉल्वेबल नहीं थे, मैनेजेबल नहीं थे. कुछ क्वेश्चन ऑब्वियसली सम ऑफ देम वर लेंदी, बट अगर आप स्टेप बाय स्टेप कैलकुलेशन करते जाते तो वो मैनेजेबल श्योर शॉट था. तो क्वांट आई फील वाज इजी टू मॉडरेट, VLRC was easy to moderate, and like always DILR has always been something, it always adds on to a surprising element, and that was it. It was moderate to difficult, but over and over the paper I would suggest was manageable. ऐसा नहीं था कि एकदम out of the world, out of the box कुछ आया था. नहीं, अगर आपने अपने टॉपिक्स अच्छे से किए हैं, if you've done your topics well, if you knew your concepts well, this was a paper which could have been very well attempted. So there were a total of 66 questions, out of which I feel around 10 to 12 of VRC, around 8 to 9 of DILR, and 10 to 12 for Quant would have been a very, very good attempt. And agar aapne itna kar liya, and if you were sure about your questions, then you would have surely crossed 99 percentile. ठीक है, so this is it from my side for slot 1. Let me know your reviews, your feedback as well. If there is anything, please do mention it in the comment section below. And for slot 2 and slot 3 people, all the very best. Do well, be calm, and paper ekdam manageable hai, so don't worry. Thank you.